right? So I do think there's just something about when violence takes hold that like, that there's something about it that it begins to breach all lines.
Yeah. So
anyway,
I guess
that was part of my reaction too.
I think all of that is understandable, but I guess, was silence not an option?
Yeah, silence to me was not grieving with people.
Hey, was silence not an option? That right there speaks volumes. Once again, just sit on that for a second, okay? Pause this video if you need to. Let that marinate for a second, okay? Is silence not an option? I gotta do my disclaimer thing, okay? Once again, I don't need like new viewers to look at this video and just start assuming all the crazy things. And it kind of sucks. Like, we as humans should give the benefit of the doubt when it comes to basic things, okay? But once again, what happened to Charlie Kirk should not happen to anybody. I would never wish political violence on anyone. If we're going to destroy someone, let's destroy them intellectually. Let's outsmart them. Let's have the facts. Let's have the data and destroy their career that way. When it comes to political violence, it is never okay with me. All right, let's get that out the way. Next point. Just because someone has lost their life, got assassinated, or passes away from any other means does not mean we forget about what they did here. That does not mean we forget about their past, for good or for worse. It doesn't work like that. And if anything, like I said a million times, if you had this energy for an individual when they were alive, and then when they're passed away, and then you change your tune, that does more harm for the conversation than good. If anything, that only exposes you as a coward, because you can't have this same energy for whatever reason. So either you were lying then or you're lying now. So that's just my 2 cents right there. But once again, the conversations around Charlie Kirk have been very interesting. And once again, it exposes people when it comes to these conversations on how they stand on principle, how they stand on business. And it's not going to be an easy thing. I've said it a million times. You're going to get a lot of hate from people, especially when you're a politician or someone who's well known. You know, fortunately, I haven't had too much, nothing crazy. But like, if you're like a Ta-Nehisi Coates, you know what I'm saying? Like, you speaking out and standing on business and not trying to sane wash or whitewash Charlie Kirk's legacy or his history or things that he's done and or said, people, you're putting a target on your own back. And some people just don't have the spine to do it. But it's important to still have these conversations. And it makes no sense to try to sane wash his history, and we can learn much more from having an honest conversation. That's simple. But someone like Ezra Klein, like I said at the beginning of this live stream, I probably listened to him, especially on Spotify when he was doing his, I think it was on New York Times, where he put out like the 30-minute, type of podcast each morning. I kid you not, I would listen to that every single work day for about 3 years. Never seen his face, but I was a loyal listener. And then once again, I became a progressive, and then I put the childish things behind me. But now seeing Ezra Klein do this op-ed, and once again, if you guys haven't read this op-ed about Charlie Kirk and his assassination and his legacy, you will be upset. And I read it the other day just for this video, and it's like, I'm upset. And I'm glad someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates, who is slowly, not there yet, but for surely slowly becoming one of my favorite individuals when it comes to political, intellectual. He had the courage to not only write an op-ed about his op-ed, but have this face-to-face conversation, holding nothing back. When you're trying to educate somebody, when you're trying to get somebody to understand the reality, you have to be straightforward. You have to be direct. You can't beat around the bush, and you have to be honest and mean what you say. And I kid you not, Ta-Nehisi Coates delivered. Let's go ahead and get into this conversation.
And if so, they were going to be again.
Not right there. Let's start from the beginning. Let's see. So all right, so for this video, I might need to put on my blockers here. Because I don't think I ever watched one of his shows, but 9 times out of 10 is going to be copyright. And once again, when you have a YouTube channel, you can't mess with these copyright videos. So this is what the black bars is for. But if you squint really hard and like zoom out, you won't even see the black lines. So let's go ahead and listen in.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I don't know what number time this is.
I think you're one of the. If you go back to the box space, I think you're one of the. You're on the leaderboard.
Hey Jake, yeah, his book, The Message, amazing, and that's when I first appreciated real journalistic skills right there. You all right? All right, back to the video.
For sure. Yeah. Well, it's good to see you, man.
Good to be here, Ezra. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's jump into the disagreement. You wrote a column responding to my column on Charlie Kirk.
So uncomfortable.
It's okay. What was your disagreement with what I wrote after Kirk was assassinated?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to thank you for having me. You know, I know that I've had to read things about myself that, you know, criticize my work. It's never easy. And people often have a very, very different response than the one you had, which is to invite me here and to talk it out. So I appreciate that. I want to say that up front. I felt that when I initially read the column, and I guess we should be fully transparent here and say there was a discussion between us privately before there was a public thing.
Yeah, we text.
Yeah, we did. We do text regularly, and we did text about this. So I felt like, having not done the research that I eventually did for the college, there was something off about what I knew about this guy. And the presentation of him as, and I don't want to misquote you here, but as basically a paragon of politics and how politics should be done. So I think I had the same reaction that most ordinary people would have, which is absolute horror at the idea that this guy was somewhere speaking and was killed. But I always think it's like important to differentiate how people die versus how they live. And then after doing the research, I had to be honest with you. That's when it got really, really difficult. When I went past my initial impressions and started like going through all of the clips of the things he said, the way he talked about people, the way he, described groups in ways that honestly, even as I was writing it, I was uncomfortable saying.
All right. Once again, for those who don't know Ta-Nehisi Coates, he is an amazing writer, journalist, like probably an example of how a journalist should, create their work. This guy has seen Palestinian people at their worst. Okay. He's seen some very graphical, crazy experiences. Okay. And he is saying he had a hard time repeating what Charlie Kirk has said in his article. He said it was hard for him to do. Now, make that make sense here, okay? He done seen some real things. And he's saying, I had a hard time saying this in my article. That is crazy.
And so the idea that this guy should be in any way celebrated for how he conducted politics. The fact that he just slurred across the board, all sorts of groups of people, and then ran an organization wherein, which appeared to me just a haven of hatred. I would not want that to be a model for my politics. And I know, as we talked between us, that you are not attempting to make a statement for the entirety of it. But I guess I feel like at a certain point, somebody's legacy, or somebody does something that is so large, that it's tough to think about their legacy and take that out of it. And that's how I felt about him.
So I think I want to get at the right level of disagreement here. So I think one thing for me is that, I don't know, for me, the immediate hours after somebody is murdered in public, when you see that sort of grief and horror pouring out of the people who loved him, and many people loved him, my instinct then is to just sit with them in their grief, right? To say, I can, for this moment, find some way to grieve with you, to see your friend the way, or in some version of the way you saw him, right? That's not my view of, the person's whole legacy, but going to people when they're grieving like that and saying, listen, I want to tell you really what I thought of your friend. Just feels like not what you do in a kind of a community. I can see people coming down on both sides of that.
I actually think that actually is a great impulse, that after somebody's been killed, and not just killed, but because we live in the media environment that we live in, that it's seen and that it will live forever, and that person's family, you know what I mean?
That it was being looped in front of all of us.
Jesus Christ.
Which I think has a lot to do with how this was taken.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible. And to have to go, to have young kids who have to grow up knowing that is a thing that exists in the world. You know what I mean? And
I'll go one step further on this. One thing I wrote about in that piece that I do worry about is I worry we are already in a cycle of political violence, of mimetic violence. I think about Pelosi. I think about Shapiro. I think about the near assassination on Trump. I think about when after that happened, I thought about me. I thought about you. I thought about all kinds of people I know. Right.
And one thing here, and once again, we're not going to watch the entire interview. This is like an hour, some change long. We will be here all day. But Ta-Nehisi, or Mr. Coates, my bad, he addresses the political violence, and a lot of people, they feel like either we're now in it or we're just, getting to that point to where there's political violence. But just like Ta-Nehisi said, and once again, this clarifies my thinking, okay? We've been in political violence. America has been built on political violence. You see what I'm saying? So depending on who you are, where you grew up in your perspective on politics, you've been seeing stuff like this. This is nothing new to a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? So if you kind of understand these things, you know where the conversation should be. We're not entering political violence. We've been in political violence. So, hey, that's what I'm talking about. Learning and listening to people that will challenge you intellectually. That's what we need. Thank you.
Right. So I do think there's just something about when violence takes hold that that there's something about it that it begins to breach all lines.
Yeah. So
anyway,
I guess
that was part of my reaction too.
I think all of that is understandable, but I guess, was silence not an option?
Yeah, silence to me was not grieving with people.
Hey, was silence not an option? That right there speaks volumes. Once again, just sit on that for a second, okay? Pause this video if you need to. Let that marinate for a second, okay? Is silence not an option? Once again, someone like Ezra, Klein, he has, his media, his newspapers and things like that, so maybe he thinks that he feels like he always needs to say something, but no, sometimes just being quiet, this right here, being quiet is better than what you decided to do now. If you don't have any constructive conversation to bring to the situation, be quiet. Go ahead and say, hey, my condolences out to his family, his wife, his kids, his siblings, mom and dad, people who loved him. I don't condone political violence, and then be quiet. Don't say nothing. But a lot of liberals, especially from what I've been seeing now, a lot of liberals feel the only way they can unite the country, which is not this way, is to sane wash or whitewash, whatever you want to call it, his history, and joining unison with Republicans in celebrating this guy's legacy? Like, no. First off, that's not going to unite the country. They're still going to hate you. That's simple. And second, you're kind of like condoning the crazy, hateful, evil things that he said throughout his political career. You're condoning that. So that's telling other people who look up to someone like Charlie Kirk, like, oh, he said all these racist, hateful things, and now they're celebrating him? Oh, well, I guess it's okay then, right? Once again, like, the conversation goes deeper, but a lot of people are not willing to. So once again, not trying to tell people they can't say nothing, but sometimes the smartest thing to do is to stay quiet and let the people who know some things, let them speak. But hey, it's too late. He done already wrote it. He didn't talk to me about it. He got my number. He could have hit me up. It's like, hey, Superior, read this before I publish this. He didn't do that.
I felt it was important as someone who is liberal, as someone who's a voice, that there are moments like that. Like, I really do feel, and it's funny because you said something like this in your piece, but it was a little bit more offhanded. That political violence like that is an attack on us all.
Right.
And that in that moment, it creates, for me, even if it's very temporary, that it's important in a moment like that to sort of, come together, to try to see other people in their grief, to try to cool things down just a little bit. I guess, given everything you read that Charlie Kirk said, and we probably don't have very different views on the value of the things he said, why do you think he was winning?
I mean, that's not really hard for me to understand. I mean, if I could just back up for a second, I want to say two things. You know, I published a book 10 years ago, Between the World and Me. And one of the constant reactions to that was that it was overly pessimistic about this country. It was overly pessimistic about the future. Why are you so dark, Ta-Nehisi? Why can't you give us any sense of hope? And the reason I would always say is because any sort of sober examination of the history of this country says that those of us who believe in equality, those of us who believe in respecting the humanity of our neighbors and of, everyone, that we're up against some really, really powerful forces of history and powerful narratives. And the implication of that is, however good we felt in 2013, 14, 15, 2008, there will be backlash. People, those of us who were crying in 2008 watching Obama, give that speech, those of us who were so moved by watching him and Michelle and step outside the car and felt so much fear for him, and then when nothing happened, felt so great about that. Those of us who believed that seeing a Black family in the White House mirroring what, some of us felt the best of us was, the best that we had to offer, there are other people watching that too. You know what I mean? And I don't take any joy in saying this, but we sometimes soothe ourselves by pointing out that love, acceptance, warmth, that these are powerful forces. I believe they are. I also believe hate is a powerful force. I believe it's a powerful unifying force.
Once again, that is bars. Straight, unfiltered, good for your soul type of bars. Once again, we got to understand, like, if you're living in La La Land where you think everything is just sunshine and rainbows and, no one can do ever wrong, like, no, I'm sorry. Just because America elected the first Black president and people thought, America was turning, a different chapter and racism is over, and no. Just, I forget who made this quote, but like, they said something along the lines of, to somebody, you're going to be their Thanos in their story. You see what I'm saying? Like, people that we see as, doing great things, like Obama, being the first Black president. Once again, politics, we understand, but like, just a symbol of what Obama represented, seemed like America was doing some positive things. But you gotta understand, like, not everybody was happy with that. And once again, when people unite under love and unity and, prosperity and, looking out for our neighbors, there's people unifying in hate. That's simple. Racism, like the whole nine, bigotry, everything. There's actually people that unite under those banners. Beautiful point.
And I think Charlie Kirk was a hate monger. I really need to say this over and over again. I have a politic that rejects violence, that rejects political violence. I take no joy in the killing of anyone, no matter what they said. But if you ask me what the truth of his life was, and the truth of his public life, I would have to tell you it's hate. I'd have to tell you it is the usage of hate and the harnessing of hate towards political ends.
Then let me flip that question actually a bit. Why are we losing?
We're losing because there are always moments when we lose.
See, that feels very fatalistic to me.
Now, I hate how Ezra isn't wrestling with what he just said. Like, he just laid out on a plate substance that you can eat on intellectually for days. Like, he just made a buffet of just things you can feast on intellectually for days. In which I understand where he's going to, but like, deal with what he just said first. Not, okay, I heard what you said, but why are we losing? Like, no, man, he just put some knowledge in your hands. Deal with that first. Maybe then you wouldn't write stupid things in the future. But no, once again, people just don't have the awareness when jewels is being dropped in their hands, It
doesn't feel fatalistic to me. It feels like the truth. I mean, and let me express what I mean. I'm Ta-Nehisi Coates. I'm the writer. I'm the individual, right? But I am part of something larger, and I've always felt myself as part of something larger. I have a tradition. I have ancestry. I have heritage. What that means is that I do whatever I do within the time that I have in my life, whatever time I'm gifted with. And much of what I do is built on what other people did before then. And then after that, I leave the struggle where I leave it. And then hopefully it's in a better place. Oftentimes it's not. That's the history, in fact. And then my progeny pick it up and they keep it going. I am descended from people who in their lifetime fought with all their might for the destruction of chattel slavery in this country. And they never saw it. They never saw it. In my personal belief system, they died in, defeat, in darkness, And so I guess the privilege that I draw out of this, the honor that I draw out of this, is not that things will necessarily be better in my lifetime, but that I will make the contribution that I am supposed to make. The fact of the matter is, as horrifying as, that the killing of Charlie Kirk was, and as horrifying as the feeling is, this moment that we are in, an era of political violence, and I don't want to sound flip here, political violence is the norm for the Black experience in this country. It just is. I don't even mean like the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King variety of it, right? Which is the norm too. You would be hard pressed to have a conversation with a Black person in this country that is a descendant of slavery and not have them be able to reach maybe right here or to tell you themselves, look, my uncle, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they lived in a small town in Mississippi, in Tennessee, in Alabama. They got into some sort of dispute with a white man, and either they were lynched or we had to run. Political violence runs through us. It is our heritage. Is that good? No. Do we valorize it? Absolutely not. Do we minimize it? Absolutely not. But a life free of it is not a thing that's really in reach in my time.
Sometimes I think that having a historical scope that wide can make the present too deterministic. So to me...
All right. Hey, now, once again, I would love to sit here and watch this entire thing with you guys. because it's an amazing interview. Once again, if you guys haven't seen it, go ahead and watch it. After this video, go ahead and watch it. Like, get your pencil and paper and take some notes, because it is amazing. But once again, not being honest in a conversation is going to get you nowhere. And sometimes that honesty is going to make people uncomfortable, is going to make people upset, and just call you all kind of names and probably mark you as the enemy. Once again, people like Ta-Nehisi Coates, we gotta make sure we try to protect in any way possible. But like, you can't sane wash hateful people. You can't do that. That's not going to help you. That's not going to help the next person. That's not going to get this country into a better place, even if possible. Okay, I'm a pretty optimistic person. If there is a way, we need to be honest and educated. That's the only way. But once again, that right there, straight bars. And I appreciate Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Let's see how you do under pressure. Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm Kesha. I get to the paper, boy. Extra. Fuck with me, you know that.